Yesterday, I was listening to some information. I was doing something and I started scrolling, looking for something to listen. I caught a video from one of my subscriptions, about an hour long, and I started listening to it. And at some point, annihilation was mentioned. Annihilation, that it's this idea that there's a portion, a big portion actually, of the population that, without knowing almost, seeks annihilation. They will throw themselves into the mouth of a predator or throw themselves out of a bridge, or they will throw themselves into the active volcano in the name of something, yeah, without thinking. They seek annihilation, yeah, and they like to do this in groups. It's group activity, and they like to spread the information almost. It's almost like the Puritans, yeah. The Puritans, in my understanding, they are pure stupidity, yes? And the goal of stupidity is annihilation as well. So, anyway, that idea is always updating, yes? And I came across new information and I started, adapting it and turning it around and see where this goes. You see, I was reading another book on Hinduism, and the author, it's like 100-year-old book, and the author mentioned nowadays societies are being annihilated almost. Traditional societies are being annihilated in favor of proletarian industrial societies. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Traditional societies, I mean, I don't care what kind of tradition you're following, if it's monotheistic, if it's polytheistic, if it's animistic, if it's monastic, I don't really care. Yes, in these traditional societies, um, people wondered. Yes, people ask themselves, "What if?" And they wondered about, you know, the origin of consciousness. They wonder about these things, and during these processes of meditation, of soul seeking, of spiritual moments, they would come across this expression that we call ethics. Ethics, it's almost the language of the soul. If you are studying, the soul, you are studying ethics. If everything is linked. So once we come across this thing called ethics, we try to implement it in our lives. That's what distinguish us from savages. Yeah, I think it was I don't know exactly right now, but someone said every human being that is born is a savage, and it desperately requires education. I think it was Thomas Sowell. Desperately requires immediate education from its parents in order to become civilized. Otherwise, it will stay, a savage. It's again, it's the parents that pass this tradition, over and over each generation. It's a process, yes, and this traditional process has been switched towards a more sectarian, shall I say, radical paradigm. Since those crazy ideas of Darwin and his buddies, they were all eugenicists and stuff. Yeah, those guys, and they believed in superiority of some, breeds and whatnot. They had these weird dreams. They were elitist, dangerous, I would say, because so many dreadful things, came out of it, like the juice, the needlecraft, yeah, the IQ test, I mean, there were so many purges, because some people was deemed not okay to reproduce, not okay to live, and they feared, the contamination. They were elitists. The contamination of certain, DNA, and I mean, it was really, really weird shit. The information is all over the place. Of course, most people don't want to look into that reality, and these things are still being taught in school. It's perfectly fine if it's their theories, right? If it's the thing they defend, it's okay to teach it in schools. So at some point, traditions was left out of the picture. People stopped wandering. They stopped seeking answers to the spiritual, this dimension, the origin of consciousness. They stopped looking, and they got this era of shall we say, scientism. In everything, all answers are already answered, and the sciences are settled, yeah, and no need to worry about any of that. What happened is they changed completely. They changed dramatically the fabric of society. For instance, in marriage, people used to get together, right? Not because of love. All marriages was arranged, you know, and as early as possible. They knew that to pair bond, people would require to be together as early as possible to pair bond, and that way they would stay for the rest of their lives together. And cultures like in India, for instance, they are still very traditional. They have 99% success in marriages. People just don't divorce there, although things might change because they are going into the industrial era. It seems things might change. It's going to be a catastrophe. You'll see the birth decline and everything, and people getting divorces for this and for that, just because of feelings, and they will split and split the family money, the family wealth. They will split the family. They will traumatize children, and they will not want to have family and not want to have children themselves. That's what's going on in this society. So there was a mechanism in traditional societies called the dowry. The dowry, it was something that was that belonged to the wife, to the woman. It belonged to her. No one could take that away from her. So if there was a rich man somewhere, single, and he was looking for a wife, he would only get married with a wife who had a dowry that was big, considerably big enough. In case of divorce or whatever could happen, he wouldn't touch her dowry. She would divorce and stay with her dowry intact. Yes, while he probably paid for all the expenses during the marriage, but she wouldn't inherit anything of that was his, right? She would stay with, I mean, in the case of divorce, she wouldn't take anything that was his. She would just keep her dowry intact. She would claim the dowry intact, and if it was, if he deceased, if he was, if he passed away, then she would, I think, inherit his stuff only in that case. But in case of divorce, the family fortune wasn't divided. It stayed in the family. And she would only, become single, and but with her dowry intact, to find another dude or whatever. In the post, traditional after, they ended the dowry system, right? Now, a woman that was broke could get married to a millionaire and ask for divorce and keep half of his stuff. So that process would divide the family fortune in half, and eventually, if there was children, they would of course be traumatized by their whole experience, and eventually in their turn they wouldn't want to have families of their own. This is just my opinion, right? So that was a strategy. Dowry was like an antidote for hypergamy. Yes, because women are hypergamous. They are always looking for, you know, the best deal. Uh, it's almost like women are in business and men are in love. Yeah, men often are the ones who engage nowadays, of course. In the past, everything was arranged, but nowadays, men are the ones who start, the dialogue to a possible relationship, and it's men that propose because men are what in love. They feel very in love, and they propose or they engage, right? And women will say yes or no depending on what the benefits are, right? She's in business all the time and he is in love. So in this modern situation, men will always be, you know what's pulling the shorter straw, so to speak, in this modern system. Okay, so that's one thing, right? um Returning to the proletarian industrial societies and annihilation. Proletarian kind of replaced, the traditional, and now the proletarian is ambition of the working classes is to become a middle class, right? And the middle class ambition is to become upper class. So there's this battle between the classes, and they always want their children to go and get educated. That's the goal, right? To get them education. Nowadays, everybody goes to the university. This was an obsession since decades ago, that every child, must not be left behind. Everybody has to go to the university. We now arrive at a point that we have too many people with diplomas and nobody to do, the maintenance jobs, the blue collar jobs. Everybody's got diplomas. The script is flipped. Now it's the opposite that we need, right? Because there was this idea that you would rise on the class system and become middle class or upper class, etc. Uh, so is within these so-called educated people that the Puritans come to be. You see, they think they are superior to the inferior classes. There's this hatred towards the inferior classes because we have diplomas, we are educated, we know better. So you can sometimes find these people. They are the most stupid that ever lived. They follow the rules, and they don't question anything. They are the ones who pointed at you and called you an heretic if you didn't wear a face diaper. Yeah, those are the ones, the Puritans, and they are always, educated, quote unquote, and for middle class, and they like to pontificate. They don't like to argue. They don't like to debate. They just like to pontificate. Yeah. So where was I? Kind of losing my train of thought. Yes, it was switched. They switched the traditional for the proletarian postmodernist, bullshit system, and they sacrificed spirituality. Right? Spirituality is no longer taught. Yeah, not by teachers, not in schools, and not by the parents. The parents are slowly, living in the care of strangers, government, and other institutions, their children, and some of them don't even care about educating them. They just leave them there from very early age, and let the institutions take care of them. Um, and so nobody nobody is doing any soul searching. Nobody is questioning. Nobody is wondering about the secrets of consciousness. Nobody is wondering about ethics. Nobody, in fact, philosophy was removed from the schools. That's a thing that is missing in these past 100 years. They removed philosophy. Whatever is being passed as philosophy is not philosophy. It's just a bunch of navel gazing, French dudes, wondering about their privilege. Yeah, they had no work. They were filthy rich, and they just wondered about superficial stuff. yeah, they didn't that's what they teach in schools nowadays. It's not philosophy. So uh, uh, people who work in institutions, for instance, they seriously lack, you know, philosophy from the wise, from the Greeks, yeah, from the Indian, yeah. They really lack philosophy, and you can see it. They because they don't have any critical thinking at all. You know, one of the most basic things, you know, in philosophy is wisdom, is the love for wisdom, and to differentiate, you know, what's good, what's bad, what's acceptable, yeah, to exclude logical fallacies, you know, to learn how to read, write properly, and debate ideas without getting, you know, triggered and foaming at the mouth, and accepting when you are wrong, and thanking the other person that redirect you. Otherwise, you could, you know, remain in that cul-de-sac for a long time. So there are no losers in debates, but you know, people don't seem to understand that. So they don't teach anything about spirituality. They don't teach philosophy. What they really want is a obedient worker and consumer. You know, that's what it is. And spirituality is out of the window. Now they've come up with these psychological operations. You know, in every place in which there's industry developing, they have a space program. They want to glorify, you know, science, industry. Look at what we can do. We can walk on the moon. We can do, of course, that's all propaganda. Nobody walked on the moon. But anyway, believe what you want. Um, they kind of replaced spirituality, you know, with that, with space programs. And in my opinion, there's this void in the NPCs. There's a void in the NPCs, in the Puritans. There's a void in the, you know, generations, current generations, especially young people. I suppose after a certain age, people start getting more in touch with the spiritual self, and they realize they've been bamboozled most of their lives by the system. The best years of their lives was actually sacrificed to feed this monster, yeah, and that we call, you know, these modern societies. And where was I? So there's this spiritual void in people, and whenever there's this Puritan idea like climate that you have to mobilize and do justice, you know, people just go straight ahead and they don't even think, yeah. There's this desire, this need for annihilation, and most of them don't even realize it, that what they are advocating, what they really want, is annihilation, and they don't want to go by themselves. They would love to take the whole world with them, you know. It's crazy. um, like during these past 5 years, um, anyone who didn't have the juice was called an heretic, yeah. If you don't take the juice, you can't come into my business. You know, that's just dehumanizing stuff, you know, dehumanizing. Um, See, they want you to go into the spaceship. They want you to go with them and jump inside the volcano. It's for the greater good. That's how these Puritans work. It's for public safety, they used to say. Crazy, crazy Puritan stuff. And the result is always the same. It's annihilation. It's like those cults, death cults in the middle of the woods. They all take the, you know, the juice, and it's a mass, you know, collective, you know, unaliving. That's how they work. It's crazy. So yeah, in conclusion, yes, the lack of a spiritual dimension manifests a void in people, and that void can be filled with, ideas of annihilation. Yeah, they'll finally find a purpose. There is a purpose. I look at, for instance, I look at the soul denying people, the people who deny the soul, the atheists. I look at them, and it's not just me. I've read this as well. They are kind of frustrated a little bit with the traditional world. Some of them are, you know, frustrated because they were mistreated. There's a lot of psychopaths in these religions as well. You have to understand, there's the religion, and then there's the sectarian. If you want, for instance, to go for a monotheistic religion, or a philosophy, it's a monotheistic. Try to find the original texts. Try to find the origin. Yeah, the most ancient, the most um, closest to the original, and do not pay attention to the sectarian. Do not pay attention to the gurus and the mistranslations and whatnot, because often that's just for the purpose of bamboozling out of your money, out of your time. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that got bamboozled and are very frustrated. Yeah, they were bamboozled by psychopaths out of the best years of their life, and then they join, these echo chambers that kind of, speak the same thing. Oh, there's no such thing as soul or anything like that. Everything is just material, and if you can't count and measure it, it doesn't exist. And these people are crazy. So, so they kind of find refuge, I would say, in that. Yeah, because if you eliminate this dimension, this spiritual, essence, it becomes, life becomes pointless. That's the Darwinian and atheistic. It's pointless. It's just a mistake. It's a random mistake of that this ever happened, and there's there's no point. Uh, anyway, so I think I'm gonna shut up now. I've been talking for 23 minutes. All right, tell me what you guys think. Have a nice day. I still have to go and find my sheep. They're around somewhere that way. All right.